Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian M. Hauser. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of the places at Hawk Blogger, and always you get your audio podcasts on Apple Podcasts. I guess some people get them on Spotify. A lot of people get them on Spotify, and people get them on patreon.com/hawkblogger if you want ad free. So all that good stuff. And today we're here for First Look. It's a Wednesday, which means it's a double pod Wednesday. We've got this show, First Look, where we take a deeper dive into the matchup between the Seahawks and their opponent this week. That is the Atlanta Falcons. And then this evening, 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, I'll be joined by Dana O'Gorman and Nathan Ernst, and we will talk about this game and make our predictions as well. So plenty of stuff to share there. There is some news to go over. I want to cover that first. I'm hoping that we get joined by Marc Raimondi, who is the ESPN reporter who covers the Falcons. We were supposed to be together right now, but he may have other things going on. We'll find out. But hopefully Marc joins us. We'll get his perspective on some things. But don't worry. Either way, I've got you covered with plenty of Seahawks versus Falcons insights. We'll go into all that in just a bit. If you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, that would be great. Would really appreciate it. And as far as news, let's start there. Not specific to this game, but just specific to the Seahawks. The Seahawks did make a move yesterday. They waived running back Myles Gaskin from their 53-man roster. Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters because it opens up a spot, and there are potential players that they could activate from IR to take that spot. Doesn't mean it's going to happen today necessarily. It could happen as late as Saturday, but you've got Julian Love, Eric Saubert, Derek Young, Jaron Reed, all available and eligible to come off IR this week. Don't know which of those guys are most likely. Mike McDonald, I'm not sure he even knows which of those guys are most likely to come off IR, but any of them could. Now there is one open spot for those guys. That means if, let's say, all four of them were ready to come off IR this week, the Seahawks would need to clear an additional 3 spots on the roster to make space. I kind of went through the roster and looked at who might be at risk if that was the case. And the guys that I came up with are D'Anthony Bell, safety, who has been getting less time. He's obviously got some reps against the Titans, but that's after Ty Okada got injured. Now you've got Ty Okada, who would be a backup with Julian Love coming back if that's the case. Obviously, you got Kobe Bryant, and maybe they would be fine with just leaving Ty Okada as the only backup. Right now, the only backup on the 53-man roster is D'Anthony Bell. Now, yes, you've got Quandre Diggs on the practice squad, and that's part of why I wonder if they would take a risk with D'Anthony Bell and let him go through waivers. Now, keep in mind, any of these guys that I'm naming would have to go through waivers. Any other team could claim them the same way that they claimed Jarek Reed, the same way that they claimed Darian Kendrick. So increasingly, the Seahawks are finding the guys that they waive from their 53-man roster are getting picked up. So consider that as I name these names that you might not see them on the Seahawks anymore. Okay, so D'Anthony Bell is one. Patrick O'Connell, the linebacker, is another. He was the most recent addition to the 53. He might be a guy that they feel like with Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas and on, that they might not keep him on the roster. That would be a tough one. Then wide receiver wise, Cody White or Jake Bobo are named. Now, Jake Bobo was a healthy scratch. He was not active this last game. Cody White seems to have moved ahead of him. Maybe that would mean they'd expose Jake Bobo to waivers. I can't imagine he'd make it through waivers. I really think he's a critical part of that locker room. It would be surprising to me if he was the one that was let go, but could be him, could be Cody White. Now, Cody White is a guy that has been available for years and gone through waiver, like been available to teams to sign, and people haven't. So I think Cody White would be the more likely guy that they'd try to sneak onto the practice squad. And if they did get him back to the practice squad, they could still elevate him 3 more times because he would have gone through waivers again. And then the last guy I looked at was Quinton Bohanna, the nose tackle. I think that's a guy that they would probably likely, he's one of the more likely guys I think that they would move. If I was to do this in order of likelihood, I would say DeAnthony Bell and Quinton Bohanna are the most likely. And then after that, it's kind of a toss-up. Maybe Patrick O'Connell, but he has looked really good. And there might be other teams looking for a quality off-ball linebacker. There are some other names that people are like, well, why wouldn't they do these guys? Rookies, tight end Nick Callerup, who has been playing with Eric Saubert out. They didn't play him, and he wasn't active before Saubert's injury. At the same time, they had him on the roster before the Saubert injury, and now he's played in games. I'm not sure they're willing to expose him to waivers. I think they really like him for the future. Then there's 3 other rookies, edge player Connor O'Toole, guard Mason Richman, and edge Jared Ivey, who at this point, they have not shown a willingness to expose those guys to waivers. So those guys aren't getting playing time. They're not active. So you might say, like, let's put those guys on the practice squad. Well, I think John Schneider and that front office are more interested in protecting those guys on the roster. So I think the other guys I mentioned are probably more likely, but we'll find out. We'll find out who is practicing today. It is Wednesday, so we will start getting practice reports for both the Seahawks and the Falcons, and we'll find out if there's any other names to keep an eye on. So I got my fingers crossed for Julian Love. I'm really looking forward to seeing him back. Honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing Eric Saubert back as well. One of the things that I think people don't realize about Eric Saubert is that he was one of the top 3 pass blocking tight ends in the NFL before he got hurt. I think he's part of the solution for some of the pass protection challenges that they might have had, over the last 4 weeks at times. So I'd like to see him back. And I know that tight end room would love to see him back. He's kind of the veteran leader for what's going on there. With that, let's welcome our guest, Marc Raimondi, who's on the phone with us. So you're just going to hear him. You won't see him, of ESPN. Marc, how are you doing today?
Good. Sorry about that. I am driving to Falcons practice. That's why I cannot be on video, but I'm here.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. It was great. It was pretty low key because, work. It's football season. Don't really get to enjoy the holidays like other people do, as y'all know. But yeah, all good. All good.
Yeah, just make sure you don't tweet about that or talk about it too much on a podcast, because Aaron Andrews found out the people do not like reporters talking about that. So Marc,
hey, I can't complain. No complaints here. It is what it is. I love what I do, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. So when we talked to you in the preseason, I mean, I was very excited to see this Falcons team play this season. I thought they made some bold moves on defense. They were young there. They got some speed and some pass rush. And then they've got some of my favorite players to watch: Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I was really looking forward to seeing Michael Penix Jr. play. And it seems almost certain that the offense would be good, and it was just a question of how good the defense would be. That isn't how things worked out. What's gone on this year for the Falcons?
Yeah, that was the conventional wisdom based on last year, where you saw flashes of that offense really being brilliant and the defense struggled. And, this year it's kind of been the opposite, which was unexpected. And I think the first kind of blow for the offense was the loss of right tackle Caleb McGarry on the very last practice, in the very last practice of training camp. And he was gone for the year. And the Falcons swing tackle, their backup for right tackle, Storm Norton, was also out. So they had to kind of use a backup guard in Elijah Wilkinson, who has played tackle in other stops before, but he was kind of like their third string option at that position. And they just have not been able to run the ball to the right as well as they wanted to, and as well as they have, and that was part of their plan. You have Chris Lindstrom as the right guard, who's one of the very best at what he does in the entire NFL, and then you had Caleb McGarry, who was also a very good run blocker, and that was a big part of the Falcons' identity, is just running with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to the right, zone blocking scheme. They were very effective at that the last few years, and this year they just haven't been, and it has kind of they just haven't really adjusted. They just have not been able to get things going. And Bijan Robinson has still had a very good year, but he hasn't been as efficient within the offense as I think they would have hoped. And that really isn't a knock at him. It's kind of a knock at just how kind of clunky the offense has been at times.
Yeah, and one of the moves I found curious at the time was the Falcons had a young, good starting center in Drew Dalman, and I just had assumed initially that they would re-sign this guy, but they let him go. He's now thriving with the Bears and their remade interior offensive line. Do you feel like that was a move that maybe they would do differently if they could do it over again?
I don't think so, because they didn't have a lot of cap room in the offseason, and Drew Dalman was asking for and got like top 5 center money, and they just could not afford to have paid him that. And Ryan Newsel, who was a developmental guy for them, he was an undrafted free agent and he worked his way up. He's actually played pretty well this year. I wouldn't really say that he's been a weak point. I would say that he's been above average to good as at the center position. So I think it's just the loss of Caleb McGarry, and their offensive line has been banged up. Matthew Bergeron has been banged up. Jake Matthews has been banged up. Lindstrom as well. They've all been banged up, and their receiving core has also been extremely banged up, including Drake London, including Darnell Mooney, who broke his collarbone in training camp. So, the thing about the Falcons, and you're right on about how they really have a lot of good players on offense, but they didn't have a lot of depth on offense.
Mm-hmm.
And the depth got tested right away, and I guess we're seeing the results now, and they just were not as deep as they probably could and should have been.
We're talking to Marc Raimondi of ESPN, who covers the Falcons. And Mark, I mean, as much as there's been some issues, I mean, after week 6, the Falcons were 3-2. They had just come off beating Josh Allen and the Bills pretty convincingly. Mm-hmm. And they had the number 1 ranked DVOA defense in the league. And then since then, it's gone so poorly. 6 of 7 losses. But, I mean, you're talking about losing by the Patriots by 1, to the Colts by 6 in overtime, to the Panthers by 3 in overtime, 3 to the Jets last week. Like, it seems like it's not like they've been cratering into being a terrible team as much as the record might say that. It just feels like they have not quite had enough to get over the hump.
Yeah, I mean, they've played these teams very close, and there were definitely moments at the end of each one of those games that you mentioned that all it took was a first down or a big stop, and they would have won those games. But as for Falcons fans, like I think you look back also though at that Miami Dolphins loss where they lose 34-10 to the Dolphins. That is an ugly loss. They lose 30-0 against the Panthers. Those 2 games go differently. That's 2 more wins. All of a sudden they're 6-6 instead of 4-8. That's a big difference. So all of a sudden, they're playing meaningful games now here in December, right when they're not at this moment. But they just win. They win those games against teams they should have beaten, and we're having a different conversation. Maybe they take one of those games that you mentioned too, one of those close games, and we're talking about a completely different season. But as it is, it has been a major disappointment.
Obviously Michael Penix gets injured, lost for the season, which is a shame. Obviously, a lot of Huskies fans up here have been rooting him on. Mm-hmm. What's the kind of temperature of the Falcons fans, the organization about their young quarterback?
It's tough because he is a guy that definitely showed flashes of brilliance, but he also had some rough games. That Carolina Panthers game in week 3 of the season was pretty rough for Penix, and there was a couple other ones during the season. He was kind of hot and cold, and then to lose him when they did, it sets up a situation where we don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1 of next season. We don't know. And that kind of puts the Falcons back in that quarterback limbo of, well, who's going to be the guy starting week 1? They do think they're going to have Penix back and healthy at some point in 2026, potentially early in 2026. But what do you do for week one? Who is your bridge quarterback? Do you keep Kirk Cousins? His cap hit is pretty substantial next season, and they would save a good amount of money, about 35 million, if they cut him. So is that the answer? Do they go out and they try to find someone, a veteran like a Jameis Winston, someone like that who's a free agent as kind of a bridge for Penix? That is kind of the issue right now. Is this is a lost season, and next season there's not a lot of clarity either, because they do have a good young defense. James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker have been fantastic this season as rookies. But who is going to be your quarterback week one? Could it be Penix? And how much can you expect from Penix coming off that torn ACL? So it kind of clouds the immediate future for the Falcons, and that is not a good sign for a team that has not been to the playoffs since 2017.
Yeah, and you talk about James Pierce and Jalen Walker, and for the second straight year, the Falcons made a lot of headlines during the draft by this time trading a first-round pick in this coming draft to be able to trade up and get James Pierce after already getting Jalen Walker. There's some Seahawks fans that wish they did not make that move, as the Rams are about to get what seems to be a top 10, maybe a top 5 pick out of that move. But I wonder, Mark, do you think the Falcons would do it over again? Because James Pierce might be better than the top 10 picks in this coming draft, which is not a very good draft coming up. Mark, you there?
I lost you a little bit, but I think you're asking me about the draft pick and Pierce and Walker. Yeah.
Let me ask you again. I wonder if they do it over again. Considering the fact that I think James Pierce actually might be a better player than a lot of the players in the top 10 of this coming draft, because it's not a very good draft.
100%. I really about that. It looks bad on paper right now because they're not good this year, but they really think they have somebody in James Pierce Jr. They think that he could be a perennial double-digit sack guy. He's got 5. Him and Jalen Walker are tied for the lead among rookies in sacks right now, and he's been really good all year. He was getting pressure early. The sacks weren't coming, and now he has a sack in 4 straight games. And he's been pretty impressive, and I don't think they would do that again. I think that they're happy with that move, because if there's one thing the Falcons lacked for about a decade, is the pass rush, and they think that they've revamped it with those 2 guys, and it seems like they're right.
So Drake London, as far as injuries and guys available, that seems like the biggest question mark. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And what's your read? I mean, obviously it's not a season where they need to rush this guy back, but Raheem Morris said day-to-day chance to play this week. What's your best guess about whether he'll be back on the field?
It's tough. I could see them maybe holding off because there's a Thursday night game coming up against the Bucs right after the Seahawks. So maybe they wait till the Bucs game. It's a division game. I know it doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's still important for the fans and for Arthur Blank, the owner. All these division games really do matter, even if the season is kind of over. So I could see them maybe waiting, but Drake London is an extremely tough guy. He's an extremely durable guy. And I know that he'll want to play. I know for a fact that he'll want to play. He probably wanted to play the last 2 weeks, but the fact is that they don't want to mess around with a guy who's a franchise wide receiver who they believe is going to be their guy for the long term at that position. But I do expect to see Drake London back either Sunday or next Thursday against the Bucs.
They're obviously now playing Kirk Cousins, and from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like he has been a step up or necessarily that much of a step back from Michael Penix, but it seems like the offense has changed quite a bit. A lot more under center, more play action, things of that nature. What's your kind of read on how that switch to Cousins has gone? You going through a dead zone there, Mark? We are trying to talk to Marc Raimondi of ESPN, who covers the Falcons.
I think I lost you again. Sorry about that.
No problem. Are you back?
I hope so. Sorry, I'm trying to do a lot of different things at once.
This is
a very long season, and a lot of balls in the air during the season.
No worries. I was just asking you how you feel like things have gone in moving to Kirk Cousins. Obviously, a little bit more under center with him in there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your read on how he's playing?
I mean, put it this way: in both the games that he started since Penix has been hurt, he's put the team in a position to win. Has he been spectacular? No, not at all. But he's been good enough to get to. Well, they had one win, and they certainly could have gotten the second win against the Jets, and that was not really. The offense wasn't great, but again, they had opportunities, and that's really all you can ask at this point from a guy like Kirk Cousins. And they didn't really lose a ton in going from Penix to Cousins because the offense really wasn't operating at a very high level with Penix either. So it's been kind of status quo. It has been, I feel like it's been a little bit more aesthetically pleasing at times under Cousins with the play action. They had the 49-yard pass to Darnell Mooney against the Saints, and that was the longest pass play to a wide receiver all season for the Falcons, which is, kind of crazy when you think of Penix because he has such a great, arm talent and he throws a great long ball, but it just wasn't coming for them with Penix. So it hasn't been. It's been fine. Certainly he hasn't looked like the Kirk Cousins of old at all, but maybe that's still to come. And there's still 5 games left. There's still, again, they're not making the playoffs, right? It's a very, very, very long shot, but you can still salvage and get to, 7 wins or so if they even 8 if they win out, which seems still a little bit of a pipe dream, but you get it.
All right, last thing for you, Mark, since I know you do have a lot of stuff going on. As far as the Seahawks, obviously you're covering the Falcons. When you look at the Seahawks, what are the things about Seattle that you think can give the Falcons trouble? And what are the things about the Falcons that you think can give the Seahawks trouble?
Well, I mean, Sam Darnold is certainly one of those things that give the Falcons trouble because he certainly did last year in Minnesota in that game. He was fantastic against the Falcons back then against when he was with the Vikings. So certainly him. Kenneth Walker is a guy. The Falcons have a really hard time against the run. That's their bugaboo. That's kind of their albatross. You saw what Jonathan Taylor did to them a few weeks ago, in Berlin, and I think that could be a big game for Walker. I think that is. I think those are definitely troublesome things. Darnold has the ability to get out of I know he's not the most mobile guy, but he can create out of the pocket, and that is something that the Falcons have struggled with quarterbacks who can create and make plays like that after the initial. Kind of being in sequence, kind of being on schedule. They struggle against guys like that. Like a Bryce Young, hasn't played great at times this year, but man, does Bryce Young play great against the Falcons. And that's the kind of quarterback that can give them trouble. So I would look for that. It's gonna be a tough game offensively. Obviously against a good Seahawks defense, but it's gonna be a tough game for the Falcons defense, which has been quite good this year at times as well.
All right, Mark. Well, let you get back and focus in on where you need to be. Appreciate you. Is there anything that folks should look forward to coming from you up on ESPN?
If you haven't checked it out yet, I had a really fun piece last week. I'm not sure if any Seattle Seahawks players were included in this, but I did a story about who are the player DJs in NFL locker rooms, and we had contributions from all across the league from my colleagues at NFL Nation on ESPN. And it was a really fun read, I thought. So I would definitely check that out. It's on ESPN.com right now.
I'm going to go find that. That's great. I know Derek Hall has become the DJ in the Seahawks locker room, but I'm curious. I'll have to go find out what Brady Henderson wrote there.
Yes,
if he did at all.
My guy.
You're a good guy. I will see you hopefully this weekend in the press box, Mark. Appreciate you as always. All right. That was Marc Raimondi of ESPN. Appreciate him joining us on the road. And as you all know, you can't control when the dead zones are going to hit. But Mark gave us some great insights into what's going on with that Falcons team. And it's a team that's like just going through a rough season. It's going through a season where things in some ways went exactly as they wanted them to. Their draft has turned out to be pretty darn good. In fact, let me go through the Falcons draft class and talk to you about how well they did this year. Jalen Walker, James Pierce, you heard how well they're both doing. They've now got a bookend pass rush duo on the edge that could be there for a long time. Then they drafted Xavier Watts, who's become their starting safety and played exceptionally well. He's got 3 interceptions. They drafted Billy Bowman, another safety who was playing very well before he was lost to injury. And then they drafted Jack Nelson, a tackle in the 7th round. Now, I don't think Jack Nelson has played quite as much, but he's been, that draft class has been very, very good. And then in addition to that, as you heard from Mark, you have Ryan Newsiel, the center who filled in for Drew Dalman, who's actually played pretty well. Like, a lot of the moves they made seem to have worked out, but in the end, the season has kind of spiraled for them. So it's a tough one for them. I'm going to get into some of the specifics of this matchup with you. Before I do that, we've got a really, really cool thing going on right now with SimplySeattle. Between now and December 24th, okay? Between now and December 24th, every single purchase you make using code HawkBlogger15 will not only get you 15% off your purchase, but it will also 5% of your purchase, whatever you buy, whatever's in your cart, 5% of that amount will automatically go to the Fred Hutch Cancer Center, specifically to their Patient and Family Assistance Fund, which provides vital help with transportation and temporary lodging for patients fighting for their lives. In addition to that, if you decide to buy one of their Simply Original hoodies for $25, $5 additional will go to Fred Hutch for that. And these hoodies are awesome. There's a JSN dunking on the goalpost hoodie. There's a Marshawn Lynch crotch grab after his, Beastquake run hoodie. There's a lot of really cool hoodies. So go to SimplySeattle.com, use code HawkBlogger15, get 15% off, have 5% go to Fred Hutch, then buy a good hoodie, have another $5 go to Fred Hutch. It is like a fantastic deal and a fantastic way to get a deal for you, to get good gear, and to contribute back. So between now and December 24th, take advantage of that amazing deal. Also, go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger, put that in your browser window. That'll get you your own special promo code, which will get you the best deal on the best boots you're going to ever own. I love my JK Boots, and we've done a lot of great charity work with the Wildland Firefighters Foundation, who protect our Northwest firefighters, who protect our Northwest forests. So jkboots.com/hawkblogger. And of course, go to Sleeper, grab the Sleeper app, download it, track all your fantasy football, your NBA info, all that stuff. And you'll also get $20 without even making a deposit. But if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll also get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail. Currently operational over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right. So I'm excited to get back into this matchup with the Falcons. We've got a super chat. We'll get this up here. This is Jay Malfair 5790 says, question, Riley Mills, have you seen him in practice and how does he look? Really think he's got a chance to contribute? Well, we do not get access to really watch practice. We watch them warm up and stretch and do that, and that's about it. So I can't, with any credibility, talk to you about how he looks in practice. What I can tell you is that when I watched him during training camp, when he was not practicing, he was out there, pantomiming the different drills that the defensive line was going through. He has been just a very eager observer of what's going on in practice, trying to soak up as much as he possibly can. So there's no lack of preparation or enthusiasm with Riley Mills. It's just going to be a matter of physically, how is he performing, and do the Seahawks feel like he can be additive to what they already have this season. It would not surprise me if they end up just making it a redshirt year for him, but you never know. There's guys that between now and the end of his practice window, which I believe would be next week, maybe that they will feel, maybe they'll have an injury, maybe they'll need time off or something along those lines. So you never know. I wouldn't put it past Riley Mills to be part of this team, but I also would not count on it either. Okay. So let's talk about this matchup with the Falcons, and we're gonna drop in through my tail of the tape, which is what we always do. And the first thing I'll just talk to you about is where the things go as far as the lineup. And again, we talked about the Seahawks IR situation at the jump, so we won't go back into that, but they could actually be back. Some of those guys. It's also possible that there might be a change at right guard. Maybe Christian Haynes will get a chance this week. I don't know. I don't think so, but it could happen. I think there's a better chance of that happening next week with Jalen Sundell coming off of IR, but we will see. And as I mentioned before, Drake London is day-to-day. Kind of questionable about whether he'll be available. That's a pretty big if. If he's out there, he's a huge addition for that team. And keep in mind, Kirk Cousins has played without Drake London for 2 out of his 3 starts. So he would certainly be very eager to get Drake London back, and the offense could look even better with those two paired together. As I mentioned, they lost Billy Bowman a couple of weeks ago. He's been basically their third safety. The other guy that they lost recently was interior pass rusher Zach Harrison. He was put on IR last week. He had 4.5 sacks in the first 7 games. So that's a pretty sizable loss for the Falcons, but they've got a lot of pass rushers, whether it's Jalen Walker, James Pierce, Ruka Roro, the defensive tackle. All those guys have been really disruptive inside. As we take a look at DVOA, all right, we'll take a look at DVOA first. And what you can see here is that there's a lot of advantages for the Seahawks. Seahawks are back to the number 1 DVOA team. The Falcons are 21st. The Seahawks the Seahawks defense is first in DVOA. The Falcons offense is 16th. So not terrible, but not good either. Basically a average offense against the best defense in the NFL. From a run game perspective, the Falcons have a top 10 run game from a DVOA. They're 7th overall versus the number 1 Seahawks run defense. We'll talk more about that in a second. The pass offense for the Falcons is 19th versus the 2nd ranked pass defense for the Seahawks. And then you switch it around. The Falcons overall defense is dropped to 16th. So it had been first, as I said, after 6 weeks. It's down to 16th. The Seahawks offense is at 8, which is one of the lower rankings it's had this year. But also the Falcons run defense is 24th and the Seahawks are at 19. They've been improving on the run side. So we'll see if that changes. The Atlanta pass defense is 14th against the 2nd ranked Seahawks pass offense. Special teams. People don't like or don't often talk about special teams. Special teams has been a disaster for the Falcons. They are the 30th ranked special teams unit. They give up. I'll show you more on this in a second. They're almost impossibly bad in some ways in special teams. The Seahawks are still one of the best special teams unit in the NFL. And then as far as defending of receivers, the Falcons have been pretty good at defending tight ends and wide receiver threes. They're 10th in defending tight ends and 9th in defending wide receiver threes. They're 14th in defending wide receiver ones and 18th in defending wide receiver twos. So keep an eye. The Seahawks are 29th in defending tight ends by DVOA. Obviously, you've got Kyle Pitts on the Falcons. He's a guy that has been better this year and could be someone who takes advantage of some of that weakness in defending tight ends. Now, when you get to the Seahawks offense, when the Seahawks offense is on the field, whoops, lost my place. All right. So I'm trying to change the height, see if we can get a little bit more on stage. And I'm going to have to turn off chat here for a second so you guys can see what I am seeing. All right. So when you look at the Seahawks offense, it's pretty evenly matched, honestly, with the Falcons, right? You've got the biggest advantage is in scoring. Seahawks are third in scoring. The Falcons defense is 17th in points allowed. But when you get to yards per play, it's a 4th ranked Seahawks offense versus a 9th ranked Falcons defense. EPA per play is even closer at 12 versus 16. Third down is 16 versus 19. Red zone is 12 versus 13. So there's not like a significant advantage for the Seahawks when you look at their offense. In fact, the biggest advantage overall in this game is the Falcons, or sorry, at least from a Seahawks offense versus Falcons defense, is the Falcons take the ball away. They are 11th in the NFL in interception rate. They are 11th in the NFL in overall takeaways. The Seahawks are 31st in giving the ball away. So that is a meaningful advantage for the Falcons in this game, and one that they have to take advantage of, because the rest of this, I don't think necessarily stacks up that well for them. I will, reiterate, this is a team that has those rookie pass rushers with 5 sacks. Brandon Dorless, who is a second-year defensive lineman, he has 6 sacks. They got Leonard Floyd, who's just returned from injury. He can still generate pressure. Rukaroro, who I mentioned, has 2.5 sacks. And this is a team that, remember, the Vikings lead the league in blitzes. They blitz at 47% of the time. Falcons are second. They blitz at 40% of the time. So you're going to have an offensive line. You're going to have tight ends. You're going to have running backs and Sam Darnold that are going to have to understand, pick up the blitzes, identify those, and play well against them in a way that they didn't against the Vikings. I will say it's a pretty different type of blitzing than the Vikings do, and it's a different coverage that plays behind it. So Minnesota is a heavy cover 2 team. And Atlanta is a heavy cover 1 team. What does that mean? It's more typical that the Falcons are going to play 1 safety deep versus the Vikings play 2 safeties deep. And as a matter of fact, Sam Darnold has the highest EPA per dropback in the NFL against cover 1. So you've got, on one hand, a Vikings defense that likes to blitz, is really good at getting pressure, has been good at taking the ball away. Those all seem promising as a Falcons fan in a matchup with the Seahawks. On the other hand, you've got a Seahawks quarterback who ranks number 1 in the NFL in throwing against their coverage style. And you've got a pretty good set of targets who can challenge what is not the greatest cornerback crew. AJ Terrell's okay, but I think they've got some weak spots at the corner position, and is not a great run defense. And I think that's going to be a key in this game. You've got to look at getting Ken Walker really active, Zach Charbonnet. Like, this should be a game where you're talking about pushing 150 plus rushing yards against this Falcons defense. I think that's a key part of this matchup. The other thing that I'll say there is the Falcons have given up over 100 yards rushing in 9 out of their 12 games. They gave up 323 yards on the ground to the Colts just 4 weeks ago. That's right, 323 yards rushing to the Colts 4 weeks ago. But then they kind of got a little bit better. The Panthers, who we just saw run really well against the Rams, they held the Panthers to 67 yards on the ground the next week. But again, they were back over giving 100 yards to the Jets last week. Now, the Seahawks have become essentially a top 10 rushing team the last 4 weeks. So this is a good matchup. Let's see if the Seahawks can continue their success there. It's going to be pretty important that they avoid 3rd and longs against this quality pass rush with quality blitz approaches, right? And then, JSN had a slow week last week. I think mainly that was due to the fact that they just didn't have a lot of time to deliver the ball other than for quick screens and passes to the flat. So I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for JSN. I don't expect that to happen a second time. And keep in mind that this Falcons defense, as much as it is a good pass rushing crew, it's because they're really fast. They're built for speed, but they're not they're not a heavy team. They're not a strong team in the middle. In fact, the Falcons rank dead last in the NFL on EPA per rush on runs inside the tackles. So this is less about hitting the edges and hitting the outside. It's more about running it right at them downhill between the tackles. That's where the Falcons are weak. That's where the Seahawks should try to make some hay. All right, so let's keep an eye on the next part, which is when the Falcons have the ball and the Seahawks are on defense. Here you can see pretty much advantages everywhere. As I think it's going to be for the Seahawks most of the rest of the way. This is just the best defense, I think, in football, but at least top 3. And the Falcons offense has struggled. And you've got Kirk Cousins, who is a statue in the pocket. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I don't think it's not like you're going to be playing Max Brosmer a second straight week. At the same time, quarterbacks that don't move, that can't escape, I don't think they have a really good track record against this Seahawks defense. Even Matt Stafford, as good as he is, struggled to beat this Seahawks defense. So you've got a Falcons offense that ranks 26th in points scored. They're 29th in third down percentage. So third down's been a real issue for them. They're 19th in EPA per play. They are 13th in yards per play. So they are at least above average in terms of that kind of efficiency. It's a little confusing that they're 8th in red zone scoring rate, but they're 26th in scoring. I think it's just because they're not even getting to the red zone a lot of times, which is kind of fascinating. They are a top 10 rushing team in terms of rushing yards. We talked about that. Bijan Robinson is amazing. And yes, it is Bijan, not Bijan. And so, like, he's a just massively dangerous weapon. Whenever he touches the ball, he's always a threat to take it the whole way. Tyler Algiers, a great alternate running back, really heavy hitter, breaks a lot of tackles. But, you know, you look down this list and, I mean, they're pretty good at avoiding sacks. They're 8th in sack rate. They're 4th in interception rate. They don't turn the ball over very much. And the thing I would kind of call out there is, what's been the difference with Kirk Cousins? Well, they've changed to be a lot more under center and a lot more play action. But Kirk Cousins is averaging about a yard per less per attempt than Michael Penix Jr. was. So they're just not necessarily pushing the ball downfield that much. We did hear Marc Raimondi talk about the one deep ball against the Jets, but for the most part, it has been a pretty conservative. And I think you're talking about a receiving core that is not that impressive for the Falcons. So that's, I think, a little bit of a weakness. Generally, most of the numbers for Cousins are almost identical to Penix. He is passing for a little bit of a lower touchdown rate than Penix, roughly the same interception rate, which was a very good interception rate. He is getting sacked more often. He's getting sacked at like a 5.5% rate, which is still not super high, but it's higher than what Penix was getting sacked at. So other than yards per attempt, there's not a huge amount of difference in terms of their numbers. The thing to note there is, you heard Marc Raimondi talk about Elijah Wilkinson playing right tackle for them instead of Caleb McGarry, who got injured before the season. Wilkinson has given up 34 pressures on the year. That's the 5th most among all tackles, not just right tackles, all tackles. And then Chris Lindstrom, who is at right guard and is considered one of the best guards in the NFL, he's given up 29 pressures, which is 3rd most for all guards in the NFL. So the right side of the Falcons line is a weak spot that can be exploited. And generally, when you get that, plus you get a non-mobile quarterback, you get the Seahawks defense giving the offense a lot of problems. The thing I would add there, Bijan Robinson is one of the worst pass protecting running backs in the league. He has a 28.6 pass block grade. So I expect Nicky Manwari, Drake Thomas, Devin Witherspoon, all to be terrorizing, Bijan Robinson in blitzes, whether it's a blitz or whether it's just a 4-man pressure with one of those guys as one of the 4. I think those guys are going to be a very big part of the game plan on defense. All right. So I talked to you about special teams. Take a look at this. This is crazy to me. You do not often see a team that is 32nd in the NFL in kick returns. Like when they return the ball, they're 30th. And also 32nd, dead last in the NFL in covering kicks. They are 32nd in kick coverage. They're 32nd in kick returns. They're also 30th in punt returns. So it is a very, very bad special teams unit. This is a chance for Rashid Shaheed to make a dent in the return game. I think there's a lot of things that could be a factor in the special teams in this one. So a very ugly, and honestly, special teams is largely what lost the game against the Jets for the Falcons this past week. So the last thing I wrote, this is all up there if you're interested on hawkblogger.com, tail of the tape. You can find that every week. My keys to victory for both teams. For the Falcons, I've got the Falcons, for them to win, they have to get turnovers, and they have to get an effective pass rush, and they have to run the football. If they can do those things, then they can win this game. And it's not crazy. Like, they've been a very good run team. They've been a very good pass rush, and they've been very good at getting turnovers. And the Seahawks have been very bad at giving away turnovers. So I think those things are possible. I think the thing that's toughest for them there is the run game. Seahawks just do not give up yards on the ground. They are really the best run defense in football. If they can slow down Bijan Robinson, then I don't, that by itself, I feel like would be a Seahawks key to victory. But I wrote some other things here. I think there's a chance for Sam Darnold to punish the blitz of the Falcons with some big plays. That can be a strong run game is another way to punish this team. And then defensively, as I said, you stop the Falcons run game. I don't see the Falcons winning this one if that's the case. So that's a look at this matchup between these two teams. I see we've got a super chat. Let me get that up here. We'll talk through it. Hip hop opotamus says, if money wasn't a factor and you could add anyone, which player would you bring onto the team for the rest of the season? P.S. I live in and am from Atlanta, expecting a big Hawks crowd, and I can't wait. Well, if money wasn't a factor and you could add anyone, which player would you bring on the team? Well, Myles Garrett, like, I mean, adding the best pass rusher, edge rusher in the NFL, I think would be a massive gain to this team. The other one would be Patrick Mahomes, probably, right? Like, those would be the two that would, I think, be great. Obviously, if you could add, Quentin Nelson or like some great guard, I think that's what some people are thinking. But I would take our existing offensive line and either of those other guys first, personally. So yeah, this is a game where the Seahawks, I think, should be. I mean, they are heavily favored to win. Let's take a look at the latest Vegas odds in that regard. So last time I saw, they were 7.5-point favorites in this game. It opened at 8.5, so it's moved a little bit toward the Falcons. It's down to, well, it's at 7 right now, roughly around 7. So the Seahawks are heavily favored in this one. I will just say the Falcons, like, they've been in a lot of these games. They are not a bad team, but they are a team that has lost a lot lately. They're at home. You never know when a home team's going to rise up. This is the last game where the Seahawks are going to be a significant favorite, I would say. And they need to get it. They need to get it. It's another 10 a.m. game. It's another long road trip, but they've shown that they can win those games and play well. They've got to do it again. We're going to see who's available to them pretty soon. later today. I'll be at the VMAC doing my, going to the press conferences, talking to Mike McDonald, going to the locker room. And then also we'll be back with you at 6 o'clock tonight for Real Hawk Talk with Dana O'Gorman and Nathan Ernst, where we'll go over what the status is of a lot of the guys from practice as well as other pieces. Let me do a quick check to see if there's any news before I drop off, because it seems like there's always something right before I leave. And let's see here. Any new news that we should be aware of? So I will tell you this. I'm predicting that this is going to be a game that Rashid Shaheed makes his biggest impact. I'm still probably the only person that is not worried at all about his level of production so far. But I know a lot of people are and are wondering, like, I don't know what people expected. Personally, I think he is a really good quality player and he is affecting coverages. And if he also produces yardage and touchdown like every couple of games, fine. Like, not critical. The same way Cooper Kupp has been a positive, even though he has not been someone who has been putting up a lot of big numbers each and every week. So that's kind of how I see it. AJ Barner puts up some numbers some week, no numbers the next week. Like, everyone's contributing. It's just the way the ball's going through. All right, everybody. I think that will do it for this episode of HB Mornings. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Appreciate the likes and subscribes. Also appreciate the 5-star reviews over at Apple Pods. Oh, one more thing. Let me just double check. I always forget now. Some people have been doing Venmo Superchats. I want to make sure I honor those. It's really nice when people do that. Since all the money goes to me as opposed to 30% going to Google. But any super chats are welcome. So let me just double check that no one did that yesterday. Hey, we did get one from Caleb Diaz. Says, man, I was so excited to see Penix Jr. play this year, especially against us. Too bad the staff has failed the entire Atlanta team. Yeah, I can't help but think coaching is a huge part of what's going on in Atlanta, especially on the offensive side. It's not pretty. So I'm bummed. I would have liked Michael Penix to be a great, great player for that team this year and make them one of the more fun teams to watch, but it just has not done it. All right. See you all later today. Take care.